both entrances. There's a more sneaky side entrance as well as the main one. When inside, look for alternative routes. Sometimes taking the stairs up will bypass groups of defenders below. Defenders, try to get back as quickly as possible when base 2 goes. Suicide if needs be. If you're set up before they arrive, it's a lot easier. Cover both entrances. The main entrance will draw a lot of the action, but watch the side door too. And one of the areas that can be destroyed is the roof. Covering the courtyard from there will often surprise attackers, but be aware that your route to the crates is that much longer. Ascension gives some really intense close-quarter combat, and can often feel quite chaotic. If you work as a group and coordinate your efforts, you'll really see the benefit. As the name suggests, this level takes place across a construction site, being developed next to the water processing plant from Valley Run. The main focal points of the map are the bridge and then the large building site at the end of the map, which provide very different fighting experiences. Base 1 is leading up to the bridge, with the attackers swarming through the far side of the processing plant and up on the main blockaded road where the defenders await them. As an attacker, you'll probably come under attack pretty much from the get-go. Working your way through the maze-like warehouses or taking cover behind the advancing light tank are some good options. As a defender, it can feel a bit like shooting fish in a barrel, but be aware that if you can see them, they can see you, so mix up your vantage points. Keep an eye out for which crate is being attacked and then react to that. Base 2 is the bridge. It's a classic bottleneck and can come at a high cost for the attacking team. So the attacking team needs to get across as quickly as possible, clear a route across for the tank ASAP. The defenders have got a tank on the other side as well, so watch out for that. Try to get a foothold over the bridge by whatever means necessary, and try not to get drawn into a war of attrition across it. Defenders, mop up attackers that make it over, and be aware of them circling you. Remember, with squad spawn, one attacker becomes 4 very quickly. Base 3 is the construction yard. It's deceptively difficult for the attackers to take down. It feels spread, but it's easy for defenders to hole up and hold on. Attackers, vary your routes. There are many ways through from the bridge, and it's easy for the defenders to cover them, but they can get fixated on one point and you can slip through. Remember, you may need to take down walls to get at objectives, and try to arrive in numbers. Defenders, be aware that the attackers can and will come from many directions. Try not to get too bunched. There are many ambush points on the way through, but don't get drawn out too far from the objectives. Deconstruction can really go either way. Attackers can make lightning strikes and push all the way through, or the defenders can really dig in and stop the advance at the first base. Each base has got really different dynamics, which really varies the kind of game you're going to need to play. Remember though, fortune favours the bold. End of the Line is the largest map in the game, and we'll see lots of vehicle action right to the end. Taking place through isolated fishing communities around a narrow inlet, it culminates in a processing plant and train depot. Base 1. There's a lot of ground for the attackers to cover here, so effective use of air and artillery is vital. Make sure to give the Apache a chance to assist by taking out AA defenses first. Arriving in force is key, so try to coordinate tank and infantry movements. Defenders, that artillery can really hurt, so you may want to send a few recon or specialists to take it out. As always, be wary of getting drawn out too far from the base. Try to keep the helo out of action. If the AA goes, 50 cals make good anti-helicopter substitutes. Base 2. For the attackers, this can be a very long route to get there, so make sure that you arrive in force. Don't get too isolated and watch for the defender's helicopter. There is a route across a submerged causeway. Arriving here is often where the defenders least expect an attack. The defenders have a lot more vehicles, but while this base seems quite defensible, be aware that there are many routes in. Watch out for lone attackers sneaking in and stealing your vehicles. Base 3. This base is split into 2 levels and has 2 main approaches, which are easy to guard. Avoid arriving alone, as it's much easier for defenders to concentrate fire. Sneaking across the bay in a boat sometimes works, especially if the defenders are fighting off a persistent frontal assault. The main attack will usually come along the waterfront, but be aware that the attackers can work around higher as well. Watch out for boats making lightning strikes across the bay. When they hit land and get into buildings, dislodging them can be tricky and time-consuming. Base 4. This base is well set up for defense, with roadblocks and stationary weapons, but the tight house setup can work against them. It's much more effective to get infantry squads in there. Often placing a squad member in a hidden location will let you avoid very long travel times. Defenders, expect a lot of vehicle attacks, but the biggest threat can be infantry. Watch out for the helicopter making attack runs too. In close quarters, make sure to mop up the entire squad. Just having one member left can mean the whole squad respawning again. Base 5. The route through is often well covered, but the attackers will often benefit from trying to avoid a direct frontal assault. Working your way around to the rear in a jeep or tank can really throw the defenders, although it's likely you'll get spotted on the way. Defenders. This base feels quite defensible, but it's very large and there's a lot of opportunity for attackers to work around. It's very easy to bunch up and all go for a crate when a charge gets planted, but be aware that that will leave the other crate undefended. End of the line is a big map, but despite that scale it's often characterized by daring infantry actions. The map is often decided in the middle bases, and if the defenders hold well on the first base, it makes it difficult for the attackers to keep numbers through to the last. This is Harvest Day, which is one of our vehicle-oriented maps. Here we have Russian armoured forces advancing across lush fields, idyllic farms and into the outskirts of a US-held village. Base 1. If you're attacking, remember to flank. You have a field on one side and a wooded hill on the other. It's a lot harder for the defenders to repel an attack from both sides. If you're defending, a tactic you might want to try is to sneak out to this little shed here. As specialists, for example, you can tag enemy vehicles as they advance past you, and even set traps on the road with C4. Generally, it gives you a good overview of where the attackers are coming from. Base 2. As an attacker, getting into the middle of the village can be tricky, not to mention dangerous. Again, remember that attacking on a wide front is often more effective. Crates can be shelled from range, and you still have the numerical advantage with tanks. First thing for the defenders to do is to blow that bridge. Attackers can still cross the ford right next to it, but it will really limit how they can advance. Watch for tanks on the other side of the river shelling from range. Base 3. As attacker, try to sneak your way up through the village. With squad spawn, it's a good way to take a base down quickly. If possible, take this crate down first, because it's easier to hit the other one from range, which is what the tanks are really good at. As defender, you're light on vehicles, but have two very defensible houses. Make sure you cover each house, and selecting the demolitions class often works well. They have the best AT capability, plus the shotgun for when it gets up close and personal. Base 4. Attackers, you'll want to press on quickly from the previous base. If the bridge goes, it's a lot more difficult. If on foot, try working your way around through the houses. While there's a lot of noise and smoke, it's often easier to slip in unnoticed. As defender, take the bridge out quickly. This will limit the attackers' routes in, so you can defend them more easily. Mines are very often useful here. Final base. This can be really tough for attackers if the defenders get organised. By now, the attackers' vehicles have probably run out, so it's a much more even fight, except now the defenders have height advantage. As an attacker, try to keep a tank alive and vary your attack path. You can get up through the forest to the left, or attack frontally up this slope as well as going up the road. For defenders, try to cover the approaches. They'll come from three sides, so keep an eye where the action is and be ready to respond if a charge gets planted. Harvest Day is one of the favourites here at DICE. We really like the mix of vehicle and close-in fighting, and it's a really great-looking, varied setting. Take some time to look around, but watch for the enemy while you're doing it. Following the course of a desert river, Oasis is one of the more vehicle-oriented maps in the game, though for the second half of the action, the gameplay will funnel into built-up areas and take on a more close-quarter feel. Base 1. Attackers' material significantly outweighs the defenders in this first clash, and tellingly you have both air and artillery support. Put both to good use, and back each other up. It's easy to forget teamwork in vehicles, and the large numbers can make you feel invincible. However, the AA gun will make short work of the Apache, and solitary tanks make inviting targets. Defenders, this base is like being between the hammer and the anvil. By the time the onslaught is finished, there won't be much left standing. It can help to come out and meet the attackers halfway. There are small outlying settlements where you can really slow down the assault. Try to divert attention from the crates and whittle down their numbers. Base 2. You still have plenty of vehicles here as attacker, but the playing field is a lot more even now. Don't expect to steamroller this base in the same way as the previous one. Try to keep as much alive from base 1 as possible, especially heavy tanks. They can make a big difference later. Often it's easier to shoot the crates from range instead of placing charges. Defenders, you have a much more even spread of vehicles this time, so it's a more balanced experience. As ever, try not to get too drawn out and watch for individual attacks on the crates. Watch also for attackers skirting behind. They can really take you by surprise and cause havoc. Base 3. The crates are quite spread out here, so attackers can choose either to concentrate on one at a time or spread their forces. Supporting the attack with any tanks you've managed to keep alive makes this much easier. Watch if the enemy has kept their helo from the last base. It can really harry you, and you have no real AA support. Defenders, you're short on vehicles again. Try to keep them alive from the previous base, especially the helicopter. Watch how the attackers are spreading their assault and try to react. It's difficult to hold both crates, so sometimes concentrating on one can help. Base 4. The bases are spread again and built up, so watch for defender ambushes. Assaulting one crate at a time often works well, but watch out for the crossfire on the open streets. Working around behind can be a good tactic, and will often surprise defenders covering more central routes. The attackers will probably be running low on vehicles by now, but as a defender, prioritize taking out any remaining heavy tanks. The area is built up, so set up ambush points, but watch out for attackers flanking you. Use the rooftops to your best advantage. Attackers will tend to arrive on ground level. Final base. This one can be very difficult for the attackers to get into. Try to coordinate attacks using the tank and infantry, and try not to always arrive using the same route. Take out one crate at a time. Though exposed, the one in the square can be defended very easily. For the raised crate, remember there are a few routes up. Defenders, concentrate defense on the crate in the square. Cover from buildings and pick off attackers as they try to run in. Watch out for attackers working around with the tank or using boats. Dig in properly here, and even though the rest of the map has gone against you, you can really turn the tide. OASIS has a wide variety of playing areas, each of which require a different approach. Husbanding vehicle resources really pays off, and can make all the difference in the latter stages. This map is Over and Out, the second part of Harvest Day, and with more of an infantry focus this time. The map progresses through the remains of the village, up past some castle ruins, and culminates in an intense battle in a secluded communication centre nestled in the forest. This map is characterised by some pretty intense close-quarter fighting in a couple of areas, so be prepared to get your hands dirty. Base 1. Attackers, fighting across the bridge can be dangerous. Try to work across in force and vary the attack. It's easy for defenders to get tied up around the bridge. If a stalemate develops, remember both objectives can be shot from range. Defenders, be wary of attackers crossing the rickety bridge, but don't get drawn too far forward. Sniping from the rear house can be effective, but be ready to move once you're spotted. Watch out for attackers flanking you around the back. Base 2. Working your way up the hill when attacking is tricky. If you get into the ruins, take advantage with squad spawn. Teamwork will win this base. Stick together, watch each other's backs, but keep an eye on the situation you're joining. Specialists, try using C4 so you don't trip the alarm, but watch out for squad mates. Also, try skirting around the left side. Quite often with all the action you can slip through. Defenders, initially this feels like a turkey shoot, but the tables can turn quickly. Don't be tempted to come down the hill. If they get in behind you, the base will fall quickly. Keep an eye on both objectives. Try to spread squads out to cover both and the route up. If a charge is placed, try throwing grenades in. You may damage the objective, but you'll sometimes take down a whole squad. Comm Centre. Attackers, be wary of defenders setting ambushes on the way up the road. It's fairly open, but it will then tighten up quite quickly around the crates. Try to focus on one crate at a time, and take out the stationaries quickly. Again, use C4 so as not to raise the alarm. The defenders can really sew up the communication centre crate, attack it from both sides and coordinate squad attacks. The route up is great for defenders. You can hide, ambush and really do damage, but use this only as a delaying tactic. Don't let them get too far behind you. On the crates, the one in the comm centre can be well defended. Try to keep one squad member alive in there, but it can be difficult in the cramped conditions. Over and Out is one of the more intense experiences in the game, but we like the way the map progresses for each zone. Watch each other's back out there, work as a team, and you should be able to crack what is quite a tough nut for both teams. Valley Run is probably one of the tighter vehicle-oriented maps, so the side with the most vehicles won't necessarily have the biggest advantage. The level itself follows the course of a river upstream, past a communication centre and on towards a water processing plant. Base 1. Attackers, use the vehicles at your disposal, and try finding alternative routes, through the woods for example. And using the boat to flank can often be effective. For the first base you'll have artillery, which can really soften up defences for an attack, but watch out for teammates. This is the gatehouse of the complex, and as such is a natural bottleneck for defenders to set up shop. The opening is wide, but easily defended, however watch for attackers flanking you. Base 2. Attackers, vary your attack routes, watch out crossing the bridge, there's a lot of cover for a defender ambush, and you'll be in the firing line for static defences. You can sometimes slip through to the side of the communication centre if combat is focused elsewhere. The main feature, the comm center, is essentially a fortress. Try to hold it as long as possible. Split defenses between the entrances, but watch out for the side entrance. There are lots of ambush points across the bridge and the ford. Mines and C4 can make the attackers' lives miserable. Base 3. Attackers, it's easy to get drawn into a pounding match, but remember the defenders have no reinforcements to lose, so will always come out on top. Push forward quickly, and try to use a variety of routes. Getting behind them can really disrupt the defenses. This is more of a holding point for the defenders. There's no real cover, and if combat persists it will really get worn down. Use a blend of short and long range kits, and hold the attackers off as long as possible. They can lose a lot of reinforcements with the right mix. Be prepared for attackers appearing behind you unexpectedly. Base 4. Attackers, be prepared for defenders exiting the base. If they do, try to get in behind them. Solitary squads can take down a crate quickly. Because the crates are separated, the defenders will tend to spread. Focusing on one crate can often yield results. Defenders get their own armor, but the entrance is wider than it seems and the crates are well separated. Watch out for getting spread thinly. Try not to get drawn out. If the BMD-3 is in the courtyard, it can perform a very successful damage limitation roll by reacting to the crate under attack. Base 5. This base can be tricky for the attackers. Wide open spaces and lots of cover for defenders make it difficult to get close to the crates. Try varying your route across the river. They probably won't have all of them covered. Clear a route for the Bradley, it can provide really effective fire support. Defenders, try to keep the attackers pinned back on the other side of the river. Be wary of single players crossing over. There's a lot of visual cover, and if one player makes it over, he can become 4 quickly. Try to stop the Bradley from crossing, and be aware that the silos are explosive. You don't want to be near if they go up. So that's Valley Run. Atmospheric and intense, and often balanced on a knife edge. Enjoy the scrap, and explore alternative routes. There's perhaps more of them than meets the eye.
The war's over. And now, opportunity's knocking. Just look at all that gold. Trouble is, you're not the only one thinking that way. You start as an attacker, or defender. You can spawn at your base, where you might find vehicles, or spawn in your squad. That's riskier, but puts you closer to the fight. To win, the attackers need to open pairs of gold crates to unlock the next part of the map. Until all the crates are taken. For defenders to win, they need to prevent this from happening by killing off all enemies while defending the crates. The more gold crates the attackers capture, the more reinforcements they get to continue their assault. May the greediest team win.